Okay, so I'm going to present the guidelines produced in the framework of the STARBIOS2 project. The themes of my presentation are three, as you see in this slide. Before proceeding to the first theme of my presentation, let me first thank all the people who contributed to the guidelines. They have been the result of a long reflection within the consortium and with the consortium member. Furthermore, interviews have been carried out and discussions have been held also in public. The provisional version of the test was reviewed by 20 colleagues outside the core teams. Of course, the responsibility of the results is ours, but we benefit of the help of many people, and I would like to thank them all. The guidelines are the result of a learning process that we activated during the STARBIOS2 project. And let's start from the context. Today, the world is so dependent on science and technology that our society and culture are revolving around it. We assume that science and biosciences co-evolve with society. It means that as society members, we are responsible and dependent on science, and as scientists, we are responsible and dependent on society. Co-evolution is challenging under many respects. We are also challenging. What is also challenging is that science is changing and society is changing too. Practicing RR&I can help to address these challenges. RR&I is therefore related to the co-evolution of science and society that creates uncertainty about the future of research and innovation and dilemmas about decisions to take to cope with this uncertainty. RR&I is aimed at considering these problems, anticipating and assessing potential implications. The European Commission defines RR&I as an approach to research that anticipates and assesses potential implications and societal expectations, so that it is possible to foster inclusive and sustainable research and innovation. Some scholars define responsible innovation differently as a way of taking care of the future through collective stewardship of science and innovation in the present, as Philip McNaughton said today. This has various possible meanings. For example, we are all societal actors, whether you are a researcher, policymaker, businesswoman or man, or a regular citizen. RR&I means that we, as societal actors, work together during the whole research and innovation process to make sure that the process and its outcomes agree with our values, needs, and expectations. Biosciences, according to us, needs RR&I to make sure that the research and innovation are aligned with the values and needs of the society that we live in. One basic idea of the guidelines approach is de facto RR&I. That means that some bioscientists already practice somehow RR&I by acting for maintaining contacts with various stakeholders in different ways and for different purposes. Unfortunately, oftentimes, this is not done systematically. Another basic idea is that RR&I needs to be practiced through self-interpretation. In the guidelines, we present our model on RR&I and structural change for biosciences research organization. It is based on this idea. Let's talk now a little bit about RR&I in biosciences, even if we have been talking of this so far. I will make a reference to some of the issues raised also in the background paper of this conference. So a transition in science is taking place, and the autonomy of scientists is increasingly constrained by an overall change in the way science is shaped and managed, affecting its structures, norms, values, and practices. Research is increasingly context-driven. There are many diverse sectors that have a say on its procedure, and this process has a lot of implications. This transition produces various problems in the scientific world. Science and society relations change accordingly. All this has been presented in our background paper, in the strategic document, and of course in the guidelines. For us, RR&I is a possible way to approach this situation. The approach of the European Commission is based on the promotion of activities in the areas listed in the slide. They are termed the R&I keys. From the practice of our project emerges that taking on social responsibility helps in managing the relationship between science and society while maintaining a strong focus on research and innovation mission. The R&I keys represent a good entry point for practicing R&I. The R&I keys are areas of life of scientific communities where the science-society relation emerge as critical. What is important is that they are relevant also for individual organizations that are the focus of our guidelines. Contextualization is the first thing to do to implement R&I in biosciences organization. We have continued to work on this concept. It is the object of the strategic document on R&I in the biosciences. My colleague Daniele Mezzana will talk of this more in depth afterwards. Anyhow, each organization should think about its social and professional networks, the research policies that are relevant to it, and the ways in which relations are maintained with external actors and networks. Important are the challenges faced by biosciences in general, and consequently by each research organization. Some of these challenges are listed in the slide. Among these challenges, last but not least, we find the global COVID-19 pandemic. Our model contains some principles of action. Each organization should look at R&I in order to promote better research and address the problem it faces. Furthermore, each organization or even group should develop its own approach to R&I that is tailored to its specific context. Some steps for doing this are presented in our model, included in the guidelines. They concern the research vision, the research process, and some characteristics of the research organization. In particular, R&I implementation means considering that the research organizations are complex, include diverse professionals, not only researchers, and the organizations have their own roles, missions, etc. Based on what I said so far, I can go to the second theme of the presentation. We thought that the practice of R&I and structural change of research organization should be based on a self-reflection process that has 5 steps, as reported in the slide. The first step, to practice R&I, it is important that the research group or organization formalizes its own position within biosciences sector. In this process, we suggest to map the actors with which one organization or one group maintains a relationship and possibly identifying new actors with which a relationship needs to be established. The actors can be research actors or a financing organization, but also stakeholders of research activity that will include research users, CSOs, policymakers, etc. It is also important to define the position of each research organization or actor concerning the main challenges that are prominent within the sector. They could be policy, scientific, innovation, and ethical challenges. This reflection will help each organization or group to define and develop a vision that includes its position toward critical aspect and other actors in its field. The second step, in order to implement an R&I plan, a team is needed. For this, it is important to identify actors, people that can help to design and implement an R&I plan. A good start is to involve actors that are already carrying out R&I related activities. It is also important to know what R&I activities are already ongoing in a certain organization. Third step, the promotion. To promote over R&I, it is vital to identify the problems that need to be addressed. This can be done by an analysis of the current state of these problems, by consulting internal actors, and by engaging people or groups within one's organization that are already carrying out de facto R&I initiatives. The R&I key can be used as a guide for this consultation. Fourth step. After the identification of the problem to address, it's time to decide what needs to be changed. We proposed using the so-called principle of action presented above. Some domains of the organizational life could be the object of the action for change, while other initiatives could be out of scope. Objects that are in scope are the organization's rules, roles, routine, mission, groups, research, visions, etc. Out of scope would be, for example, a legislation change. It's not up to each individual organization. These changes have to consistently impact the organization action, identity, culture, and agency. Negotiation is an essential part of the process because it helps to define how the changes should be introduced or to manage consensus and possible conflicts related to these changes. Fifth step. After having identified the challenges or problems that one wants to address and what one would like to change, it's time to make an action plan. This action plan is essentially the how-to. To activate an action plan is a complex and non-linear process. An action plan indeed is a process that can be represented by this figure. The following moments are essential in this process: activating a core team and an extended team, carrying out a context analysis, defining a detailed action plan, finding and mobilizing the actors that will play a role in the change towards RR&I, and negotiating the process of implementation of the action plans and address by negotiation the emerging problems, conflict, and issues. The action plan should have a lasting effect or produce structural impacts and reaction. A last moment, therefore, is a self-reflective exercise on the results being obtained and the possible changes in the initial foreseen actions. In the next part of the presentation, I will discuss some of the critical aspects in implementing an action plan. This is the third theme of the presentation. Indeed, it has to do with what happens once an action plan has been defined and is the moment of action. We have been able to identify this area thanks to the experience of implementing action plans in research organizations. The first area concerned the establishment of the core team and its maintenance. In implementing our action plans, we found that it's critical that one core team ensure its continuity and stability, acquire a wide set of knowledge and competencies, conciliate research activity and core team membership, including the possible time conflicts. The second area concerned the analysis of contextual factors. It should include external factors like national policies, internal factors such as organizational culture and values, leadership attitude, etc. This analysis helped to single out problems and opportunities for RR&I and structural change while implementing the action plan. It's not so simple to carry out this context analysis and keep it updated, considering all the possible and relevant changes in the context produced by the action plan itself. The mobilization of the internal social actors beyond the core team is also crucial. The critical issues emerged were a possible diffidence toward RR&I among bioscientists, a low priority acknowledged to RR&I related institutional changes, the participation in the action plan in the RR&I activities deviate from the main objective and daily needs of researchers. The fourth area concerned the negotiation of change during implementation. Negotiation is a type of interaction necessary for the realization of many activities foreseen by an action plan. It is a complex activity since such interactions are of different types. They concern, for example, the operational implementation of the activities, the creation of a consensus among the actors, the reduction or elimination and, in a case, a management of conflicts, and so on. Negotiation is often underestimated, also because it often takes place in highly informal contexts. It is somehow invisible. The fifth area concerns the self-reflection over the activities carried out. Self-reflection cannot be taken for granted. In our experience, we noted that there is a need to understand the emerging factors that hinder and facilitate the practice of RR&I, and this requires a learning process. The unexpected effects of an action plan must be brought under control through procedures that are not usual for researchers in the field of biosciences. The ability to interpret what happens with an action plan has to be developed. Thank you. This is a brief presentation. If you have questions, of course, I would be happy to reply to you.